special week where we're starting into the broadcast. And we want to welcome all of you that are joining this show today. We hope you had a beautiful weekend and that your families are safe and all of you are doing well out there on the continent and in the diaspora. Yeah, like we say, we're starting this week on a special edition with the preparation of the launching of the Pan African Daily TV official website and platform, the AfroWorld.tv. And I want to thank all of you that have been downloading that app and creating your accounts on it. Because as you can see, we are taking off on a very high note and we don't have any more time to waste. Yes, so the whole of this week, we're going to be talking about the Pan African Daily TV, the Afro World TV website. What are the futures? How can you create an account? How can you be a part? And what is even available on this AfroWorld.tv? I know a lot of people have been asking, but Susan, what is different? I mean, we saw AfroWorld.tv was a social media platform, and is it different or this is something else? No, it is the same. It is the official website of the Pan African Daily TV. So it's a combination of a platform where you can have everything that serves the whole interest of the African people worldwide. So, but today we want to talk on a special topic, why the Pan African Daily TV is the new game changer of this century, and why is it necessary for us to push forward this media. Today, we have in our studio our brother Yasin Kiraga. Kiraga, I'm sorry, a Ugandan brother who is currently a very active Pan-Africanist and has been on this journey for so long. He's going to be telling us about his event and who he is. For those of you that have never had the opportunity to meet him, but he's on the Pan-African Daily TV for the third time now consecutively. And today, he is not just sitting as a Pan-African activist or, you know, the organizer and event manager and promoter, the biggest one out there in the UK, but he's sitting here today as the Pan-African Daily TV strategist. What does that mean? It means he is supporting us on the Pan-African Daily TV to make sure that we get this TV up, running, and functional to be the biggest ever dream in the 21st century for Africans worldwide. Because of his experience and also his engagement in his work, but also particularly because of his passion to make sure that we deliver to our generation what is strategic. It's not just kind of doing platforms and doing small projects, but actually leaving a milestone. And so we all have been working collectively for more than a year or close to a year now on building the Pan-African Daily TV, and who are actually the main core teams. It's just a small group, just a small engaged people, but that are collectively reaching out to the whole diaspora worldwide. But now a lot of people know me, Dr. Susan Teta, on the Pan-African Daily TV, but actually they don't know the story behind this hard work, where we're coming from with my family, how much engagement we have put here, how much commitment and support that the community has always stood behind every projects that we've been doing for the past 20 years, and how we got to this point. But these are all stories that we would be talking about when we get into the process of how did we get here, and why is this very relevant. Dear listeners, dear Pan-Africans, dear Africans worldwide, dear melanated people, dear well-wishers of Africans and supporters, why is it very important to know the story of the Pan-African Daily TV, or to even know my journey and my family? Because exactly each and every one of you Africans watching me today has a story. But now who knows that story apart from just seeing you? Yasin Kiraga sitting here has a huge story. Who talks about him? Our mothers, our parents in the continent, the Bayam Selam on the streets of the African continent. Who talks about them? Who knows their story, right? And now, you know, all the strugglers, all the immigrants, or those that are struggling to earn a daily living, be it the widows, be it the singles, be it whoever, who knows their story. Most of us have just met on the Pan African Daily TV for almost a year today, but who knows your story? But the issue that we want to discuss today about the need for this media and the reason why the Pan African Daily TV is the game changer is that who is controlling the stories that they talk about you, about your continent, about your history, about your food, about your health, about your economy? Who controls your own story? Who tells your story? Who knows even your story to be able to tell it? So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you today on this special week that we're going to be talking about the Pan African Daily TV website, AfroWorld.tv. But before I get my guest and we open up this conversation, I want to give a very big shout out to Patrick Kasarim, who is a social media expert out there on the continent, has been working night and day. But also, I want to thank Tumi Tata, who is sitting right here and controlling the technical crew for tonight. Him and Ia, that has always been here by my side, and others, as you know. But also, I want to give another one big shout out there for my daughter and my princess. She's already loving already. Naisha. Naisha is the biggest support that we have for young girls and African girl child growing up in the diaspora, but that also came from the continent. And so all this team and technical crew from the programmers and me sitting here has contributed a lot to be where we are today. So opening up this week to launch this special Pan African Daily TV. Hey, I want to shout out to all of you that have been supporting, being technically or logistically or funding or everything. We all must build the Pan African Daily TV to become the 21st century biggest, biggest platform for Africans worldwide to tell their stories and to control even the narratives of those that are telling your story. Yeah, so we're going to act like a CIA agent, just like they do. All the foreign news reporters reporting about Africa now would have to sit upright, because right now we're going to scrutinize every little story that they tell out there. And if you are a reporter working and earning your living by telling the stories of Africa in a negative way, we're going to come after you. We're going to scrutinize all of you telling the stories of Africa, whether it is true or right. So we make sure we represent in the right way. Thank you. Again, as I said, that was the short introduction on what we're going to be doing today. And let me get back to the studio with my honorable, young, smart, intelligent, innovative, young African doing marvelous works out there in Canada. Good evening to you, my brother Yasin. How are you doing?
Good evening, Dr. Suzanne. I'd like just so much to send my appreciation to you. Always to do this great work to every African person around the world. People of African descent, globally, Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanism everywhere, worldwide. The great work you do connecting us is really great. And I'm so happy again to be here this Pan-African Daily TV, which is now the leading major television internationally out of people of African descent we own here online. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think I have a little problem with your camera. There's just a lot of noise that I barely don't really hear you articulate clearly like we do the test. I don't know what happened to your camera. It's really not.
You hear me?
Microphone. Yes, I think it's
now?
better.
Okay. Yeah, it was microphone.
Okay. Yes, exactly. That was the microphone. Yes, thank you also for being here. I know that you're representing a lot and you're sitting on a very important organization out there. And you're preparing a very interesting upcoming event, which you call the Black History Month, which is celebrated across the diaspora and even on the continent. As activists now start picking the history of their brothers and sisters in the diaspora, and they start celebrating also and commemorating this historic event. And so, what is going out there in Canada concerning the Black History Month before we get into our conversation for today?
Actually, what is going on right now in Canada is celebrating the 25th Black History Month, or African Heritage Month. So many things happening, a lot of there's so much excitement, people sharing stories. It's a great opportunity that we are here on this platform right now, discussing about sharing stories, who tell the story. February is the month of telling the story of people of African descent, and it is very exciting that many times a lot of people who are telling these stories are persons of African descent. So this is the right time to have this discussion. And the African Descent Society, we have a number of different events that has been going on throughout the month. It is the same thing with the other African descendant organizations, which is in different locations across Canada and other parts of Europe and North America. So celebration of Black History Month, African Heritage Month, it is the conversation which is happening right now. But the theme of this Black History Month this year, it is the future is now. The future is now, and I want to, my conversation with you is really gonna be focusing on the future is now to have the Panafricandailytv globally, worldwide.
Absolutely. Thank you. The future is now and the right time, particularly for Africans. This is the time for us not to make excuses, but to take a chance and create this narrative. Why?
First of all, Doctor, thank you so much. Think about if you were not here today, if the Pan-African Dairy TV was not online for the last 2 years, has been operating, if it was not there, who will know what has been happening within our communities? Who will give us the opportunity right now to be here? Because you may not get a lot of Yasin to come to speak at Pan-African Daily TV because there is no opportunity for them to come here, and they may not even be any opportunity at all to go to speak at the BBC, to go to CNN. But this is African CNN today, this is African BBC today. So the opportunity is now, because we've been ignored for about 500 years ago. The continent of Africa has been living in marginalization with first of all, with the impact of transatlantic slave trade. Millions, 11 million Africans were taken out of the continent, brought here. It was not only to bring this human body, even the brain. They chose the experienced African, the most energetic men at the continent. They were brought here to work in sugar plantations and of course other forms of businesses. So it wasn't only bringing people alone. They also dominated the slave owners, ensure that they even control the mindset, the thinking, the stories that an African man brought to the diaspora, to the West. So many people think that when they brought Africans here, they came to work only in sugar plantations as slaves. That was not the reason. Otherwise, you should not see blues music today was initiated by the slaves. Jazz music was initiated by the former slaves. Hip hop music was initiated by former slaves, and so many inventions. But these are not things that are owned by Africans. These are stories. These are stories which are talking about. These stories are not owned by Africans. So the battle today, black men, African men are fighting with the former colonial or former slave master, is the battle of the story and the battle of the mind. Who control the story and who control the mind of the continent? And this is where I want to concentrate in presenting my argument why the Pan-African Daily TV is the most important strategic idea that the entire planet of people of African descent and the Africans should embrace today. Who should revolutionize? Who should colonize? Who should control the story? Who should control the mind of people of African descent and Africans? It is when you have the media, your own media, where stories are controlled, where stories are mined, where stories are kept. We do not have that bank. And this is the reason that when 11 million Africans brought to the West, there were lots of slave owners. They control the Africans with whatever things they have, how they think, what they create. What they create, I mean that if a slave was creative in terms of music, whatever things a slave could produce, it belongs to slave master. So by 1863 around, during the emancipation of proclamation of the Declaration of the Rights of Africans by President Abraham Lincoln, there were agreements. The end of slavery didn't come on a mere plate. It came with agreement. Slave owners were to be compensated, but also they had to be ensured or trusted that they had to own the stories, the inheritance, whatever former slaves created belongs to the slave owners. In other words, they concluded that a slave does not own anything. So any legacy, any stories, anything they have left belongs to the former slave owners. I want to make that to bring you back to the current situation, that who control the American story today, who control the media, who control the heritage of Africans, who control the history, the culture of people of African descent here in America. I want to give you a simple example. In Vancouver, where I live, Vancouver is an island, very small city. In 2018, the Vancouver music industry, music ecosystem report study indicated that the city obtained about 500 million in live music. That's not the entire entertainment industry, because Vancouver is one of the top world-class entertainment center. But on the live music, the city got $500 million. Who were the contributor? The top three contributor, Europeans, and then the African descendants. And then who were the major genre of music? Hip hop was the leading, R&B, jazz, and blues. These are the stories we are talking about. Who should control these stories? History. Blues is the music is from Mali. Jazz is African music. R&B, hip hop. Hip hop is stories. In fact, hip hop rhythms, you cannot sing hip hop unless you are telling the storytelling. And who know how this hip hop music came about? It was because of the experiences of the slaves during the racist times, when a slave had no say. At the same time, the experience that they went through, racism, discrimination, compelled them to put those experiences to speak out to the slave owners and the former slave owners that enough is enough and you rhyme it. I'm tired your discrimination and you rhyme it. It's too much killing off and you rhyme it. So a slave turned that negativity into a storytelling and music. And of course, in Africa, the way we tell the story, we sit around the fire. And the elders or someone who bring a story, bring the stories, African stories full of treasure in terms of healing, mental health, and other forms of, influences. But today, if someone tell your story and he doesn't know it, is going to create a falsification of information that is going to feed other people about you. And that will be a kind of stereotyping. It will come from that way. Racism, it will come from that. Discrimination, it will come from all those forms of experiences. So I'm talking about why we should have our own institutions which can control, which can tell our stories. When I give another example of Middle East, we have Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is telling you the stories of the Middle East in the way they are, the way they should be. And the news are undoubtable, whatever news come from Al Jazeera. You cannot portray Middle East with false information, because Al Jazeera is considered to produce the best news, about Middle East. Why, if Al Jazeera can produce the best stories about Middle East, why can't the Pan-African Daily TV produce that such a beautiful treasure of knowledge and experience and the reality about the continent and its own diaspora. So this is very, very important that if you do not have if you cannot tell your history and you cannot tell your past, and you allow another person to tell the past, then that person will control you mentally and ideologically, and you influences the policies that controls you, that governs within your own house. And that's why the Chinese, they have a saying, Sun Tzu, a Chinese philosopher, said, you should not tell the story at your neighbor when your house also has a story. In other words, don't look at the snow at your neighbor's house when your house is full of snow. We have seen a lot of snow in the West. In fact, it's too much. But the West always want to tell the African snow, which is completely rare to be seen there. They look at the African snow as the major problem, and they forget that the snow here in the West is too much and very cold. You cannot sustain it. They look at Africans as a source of drug abuse, marijuana, and all other forms of that negativity. But they forget that here is the manufacturer. Streets are full of mental health addicts with drugs. People die every day. Those stories are not mined. Those stories are not told. But what BBC will construct is the story, what they have seen in Nigeria or what they have seen in Jamaica. That's a form of story that they will bring attention in, because that's what they want to sell. So having an institutionalized media institution like this, the Panafricandailytv, it has a lot of things to be done on the continent and in the diaspora. Number one, in the diaspora, the continent, in the diaspora, the Panafricandailytv will be able to construct and represent the image of the people of African descent the way it should be. And also it should expose the anti-Black or anti-African descent racism affecting the people of African descent, which we don't see in the mainstream media controlled by the West, former colonial masters, former slave owners. They will not tell those stories, how they mistreated, how they tortured, how they discriminating African descent people today, now, then, and in the past, unless we have a media house which can bring the experience, the negative misrepresentation and misconceptions about people of African descent in the diaspora, in Germany, in Europe, in America, in everywhere. The experience is really, really, really the same, and it is being silenced. That is one area of having our own media house. It will, but globally or in Africa, the same way that this Pan-Africandailytv will help us to reconstruct stories that has been falsely told by the Western media, or by those people who are not supposed to tell our stories. The media house of our own will be able to look at without bias to tell the fact, the truth, the professional journalism conduct or media conduct, thereby can really makes or bring influencing the international community with the reality of what is happening in Africa, what is happening in the Middle East, what is happening in Caribbean, what is happening in the whole world of people of African descent, rather than the way how we can misrepresented by other mainstream medias. So you can see the gap which I'm trying to show you, that there is a huge lack of everything is being left to either former colonial master or to the imperialists, or to a former slave owner to tell the story. And that way he will delete the negative information which may portray him as a bad person, or as someone, a discriminating person, and then he will focus on those stories that you want to see, they want you to see. That one, we need to have our own television as this the Pan-Africandailytv, to be able to reconstruct and tell the reality about the people of African descent, and be able to control the message, deliver the message, be able to reach out to the common person in the African countryside, in the villages, and bring the reality. Because when the Western media constructing stories about Africa, they will go and look at very negative areas, which should have been the same. If they want to expose the West about to Africans, they could go to New York and look tens of thousands of white folks who are on the streets and expose to Africans that look how New York look like. The people, Africans, will not fly to come to look jobs here, but they show them the right area, and then they show the Western people the bad areas about what? About Africa, that prevents them not to go to look opportunities at the continent. But Africa has the most, it's the most strategic geopolitical area. All that resources from there. Stories, we are so rich. In other words, our stories are still too virgin comparing to the Western media stories. There is no news here. News are in Africa, and those news, because they are in Africa, they need to control that information, and they cannot allow any media houses like our own to stand. So that is one of the marginalization that the continent is going through. We need to stand to defend the African continent, the marginalization of African continent and the diaspora in terms of the mainstream media, by owning, by creating. It should look and smell Africa, design Africa, as I can see in the screen there, that if someone look at the studio of Panafricandailytv, he doesn't ask. He definitely know that I am home, or this is the continent of Africa. This is how it look like. Then, to the people of Africans and those in the diaspora, having Panafricandailytv of our own, it will revitalize the stories, revitalization of the stories that have not been told or that are negatively told. And then this media house will help us to build the story, what we call the history of continuity, or rejuvenating the history that have been neglected or that have been undercovered and in the blanket, because the Western media, they don't want people to know these stories. They keep them silent, they delete them. Having a media house like the Pan-Africandailytv will be able to revitalizing and build rejuvenating this history, and then keep the history alive, keep the stories alive, and then tell these stories the way they should be told to those to the audience around the world. This is not what BBC, Deutsche Welle, CNN they want to do. They tell that story which influencing their own policies, foreign policies, rather than what the people of African descent would like to see or to hear, or the international community would like to see or to hear. And on top of that, you also can think about what we call institutionalization of democracy. We talk about democracy every day. We are fighting, all of us, democratization of our nations, our societies. But how does Africa going to fight for democracy in Africa if there is no exposure of dictators, if there is no exposure of the Western imperialists who really work with those authoritarian leaders or autocratic regimes, and they cover them in order to compensate or to corrupt them for resources, and then they exchange power with the resources, making the person at the continent to suffer because of one man's status quo. As you can see, Mobutu in Congo, he ruled the Congo and amassed with millions of pounds, billions of dollars. When Mobutu died, which the Swiss bank announced that they had about $600 billion for Mobutu, but they said they cannot give the money back to Congo. When his son Abacha died, Swiss bank announced that we have millions of dollars for San Abacha, but we cannot give it to Nigeria. If they return back the money for Nigeria, then every Nigerian will be able to get money from Swiss bank that stolen by Sanabacha. But who tell these stories? Who drafted these stories? How can the African people know this information? Because the media, Western media, pitch these stories and they put them out there when they want. Sometimes they use them as media stunts when they want. When they want to influence something, they will do that. We need to have a media house which can really be non-biased media, can represent the continent, can reach out to every African person, can reach out to every African institutionist, can speak out as a global Pan-African voice. And this is the mobilization plan that all of us we need to create international mobilization, that a call for international community. Even those Africans in the village, to reach out to them, to tell them that your contribution is going to save your story for the next generation, is going to revitalizing the African continent, and the diaspora is going to retell the story that has been told in a negative way, impacting the continent to be marginalized and dumped away as something, a source of material, but without no human capital. This is the importance of having a media house. Politically, having our own media house is going to help us, institutionalizing political institutions in Africa, democracy, the human rights we are talking about, and all other forms of political ideologies which now dominated the international community, influencing influenced by the Western stream medias. We need these issues to be discussed by our own TV, and we cannot move forward to have this television if there is no way we can collaborate and influence everyone and call everyone and fundraise online, physically, donation, and making partnerships with the already established African social enterprises, businesses, community intellectuals, all of them really to understand that it's time now. The future is now. The future is not in the future. It's the future of Africa today to thrive. And in the thriving that, we must thrive with the media. We must move with a media house that is owned by the African person, like Dr. Susan and the team who work with you, the engineers, those who pitch the stories, the planners, everyone behind this innovation. They need to be applauded. They need to be credited for the great brain behind this. This is where I see myself, the missing gap. I was talking to you few hours ago, and I mentioned that Africans, we centralized marginal issues. African people, including the African Americans, we marginalize the centralized issues, and we centralize the marginal issues. What I mean here, that we give more priority stories that doesn't matter about Africa. We give priorities for stories that doesn't matter to people of African descent, and we focus on those stories which matter for other people. Stories that matter to the people of African descent are ignored. They become marginalized. And we create space for stories which really constructing the status quo of the imperialists or the former slave owners or the former slave masters. We run their campaign effectively. We vote them in political offices. If you run in Germany today, you are most likely to fail in your own community, and the white person more likely to win in the black community, in the African descent community. We centralize the issues which does not really matter. We give them more priority. And we marginalize issues which really matters to transform our own society. So, and also I want to give you another example here that I also will leave here with you tonight. Let's look at to Abraham Maslow, the hierarchy of development. Those who study management and economics, they know. Let's look at the principles of management, the old principles and the modern principles of management. Google them, research about them. Are there any principle that does not start with self-actualization? Or is there any way you can move and reach out a self-actualization without understanding who you are at the first level? And what happens to the first hierarchy of development? A person looks for survival. Stories are part of survival and human development. How do we consider stories and history and storytelling as part of survival and human development? It comes from social capital. Social capital. Africa will not grow, even in Germany, even in Europe, even in America, unless they control what we call social capital, or they create what we call social capital. And what is social capital? Social capital are stories. Social capital, history. Social capital, music. Those are the basic, fundamental, and most important hierarchy of needs a person needs for survival and development in the daily life. In fact, I said for survival. If a person arrived in Germany or in Munich today, or in New York today, or in Vancouver today, or in London, and has no any space where is going to start as a welcoming center for him, where there is no people to connect that person, how is that person going to survive? You also seen people who have gone mentally unstable in mind. But in Africa, the way we treat people with such condition, it is through stories. We hear stories. They see them. They see stories. They hear stories. Will a Western person tell a story that will heal an African person? The African continent and African Union have forgotten. They have forgotten the importance of the hierarchy of needs for the development of an African person. We start from the family, and then you expand resources, building a house, getting jobs, and all along the way from the beginning. You need information. There is no way you are going to avoid information. Even today, any president, any leader in Africa will need to know what is happening in Europe. Any leader will need to know what is the information happening in Europe, in Germany, in Australia. But they go to BBC. I'm not saying BBC is not good. It's good too. But the media houses, BBC was created not to develop Africa. That's not the interest of BBC. CNN, it was not created to develop the interest of Africans and people of African descent. Al Jazeera did not create that is interesting to develop Africans. No, they were created to sell and develop those who created them, and we should not expect anything good from them until we stand ourselves as upright men, as Thomas Sankara said. And again, it takes us back. Lack of there is no way, if you lack the control of the stories and the history and your destiny, then you are not independent. Ideologically, you are influenced by other people. You depend on other outsiders ideas and ideologies and information for you to survive. The Africans, from the day before the formation of colonialism in Africa, the Africans had a ways of variety of sharing the information and control the stories. They wrote stories on the stones. They wrote stories on the palm trees. They wrote stories on the top of the mountains and keep the information there. They keep stories around the fire. They tell stories around the fire. They keep stories through memorization. They wrote information through letters, or they send people connecting that. The Western media, they introduced the cable, they introduced the radio, they introduced the modern televisions, and they started taking the advantage that the Africans could not own such things, then they should take advantage of them. And this television you see today, when Africans under colonialism, they introduced a radio station. Lots of people now, they have radio station in African TV. But I need also to pass this information here to remind why these institutions were created. During the colonial era, the Europeans, colonial masters, realized that the Africans had very good voices. The good voices in music, the good voices in storytelling. And they coined the idea that they should record and manufacture African stories on what you call 70, 80 RPM records. And then they ship them to France, those records, and they return them back to Africa. They sell them millions of dollars. And that is why you see today recording studios, they created the radio cassettes because 78 RPM was very expensive. Then they created the cassettes. TV was not there. TV is a recent thing. So they created the cassettes and the radio as a form of information. And they controlled the information on the radio. The radio was used during colonial times, during all other forms of conflict that they waged. They had a radio. They had a system of communication. A black man or African man had nothing. He used the stone and other smaller tools to survive. That is a long way. You've seen that this problem has not been solved. I'm talking about the problem of lack of media representation for the African continent. It's a problem of 500 years that the Western media have been exploiting and enjoying the opportunity and the advantage of lack of information, lack of our media representation. It made us, all of us, to be marginalized and being left out. Therefore, the television later on came. It was the last media. It was the last media that came out to be produced by the West, and now it again is still controlled by them. We do not have any. We do not have anything of that nature. And the Pan-African daily television, I think this time, if we can have this TV and established in at least one station in each region of Africa, then we will be able to rejuvenating and possibly supplanting colonial ideologies out of the continent and the media, international media biases and misrepresentation of the continent. And then we can be able to liberate the continent and the diaspora through a positive message that the world is waiting eagerly to be seen, which is still not there. Until we all of us unite and we ask our leaders, ask well-wishers to support the Pan-African Daily TV, it won't take 5 years to conquer the continent and the diaspora again. And that's when the Africa will be free and be liberated and attain a true and meaningful independence. Otherwise, we are still right now under colonial rule, a modern colonial rule in everything. Ideologically, we are under colonial rule. Politically, again, we are under colonial rule. We are under slavery, modern slavery, which is controlled by this mainstream Western media.
Thank you very much, brother. Thank you for that elaborate presentation and full of facts and just the reality. That's why I like these conversations, because we mustn't go through facts and statistics. We know it. There's just nothing that we even need to go to find, oh, how many media houses or how many this or how many percentage. It is the biggest scam and the biggest marginalization, or what can I call intentional
marginalization.
Yes, bad faith that had ever existed on Africans and the black man. That's the worst thing that we can talk about every other thing. And you see, it comes back to the point that no matter what we do, we just like turning around in a circle. Nothing happens, because in as much as somebody controls your story and tell you who you are, it is absolutely no matter what you do, they're going to say it from what they think you are. And so you can never influence anything. And so no matter whether we are developed, an African is successful, no, they would always put that poverty tag on you. Now, we take a very basic example from what you've been saying. Growing up on the continent in the African or even in the diaspora, you work to pay your bills, feed your family, take care of your home, the same. You live your normal life like every other person. On the continent, the same thing. Whether today they're going to tell you about statistics of 70% of Africans on the continent are jobless. They're young people now. Who says that? And if you want to even take into it, and they will start telling you, oh, bring you facts. What is fact? Fact is the fact that this 70% that are jobless feed themselves, send their children to school, take care of their medical bills. Now, who are you to label them poor? I mean, who just gave you that audacity, those gods, to say these are poor people? And now people sleep every day. They get up in the morning, they do their daily things. I mean, they take care of their lives, they feed themselves. They sponsor their children growing up. But they come and they label you. It's the same thing. Like they begin to tell you, 65% are illiterate. I come from a entirely illiterate home in the Western standard. My mother, my father never read or wrote. But they built an economy. They were farmers and they raised us, and we are what we are and the generation to come. And you just come to say they are primitive because they could not read and write, but they did all the economics theory and everything you can. So who tells the story and put the poverty tag on a black man? Who? Who tells you when you live your normal life, you pay your allegiance, you contribute to world peace and civilization in every part. And some good person wakes up one morning and want to determine, no matter how rich you are, they're always going to term you poor. No matter how rich, even God has blessed you with your resources of your continent and your people, but somehow some evil person is always going to say you are poor. They're always going to...
It's a level.
Even give
a perception.
Even the Human Development Index. And they're going to say, oh, these countries are the poorest. On what? Poorest of what? Because changing the story, not to say they're rich, because you're stealing all the riches, isn't it? So it is very critical. It is so very critical that...
Doctor, there is also one point, a statement. It's a point I want you to note down. People, they tell about colonization, but they don't tell the phases and the system, the way. I mean, people talk about decolonization of Africa, but they don't talk about the phases and the stages of decolonization and the strategies, how the liberators, the colonial, those who fought for colonialism, like in Kwame Nkrumah and others, what were the strategies they used to dismantle colonialism? And what lesson can we learn from those strategies to confront the modern racism, discrimination, and the marginalization of the global world, Afro people around the world? In 1923, sometimes I told you about it, that colonial masters, they brought here younger Africans to study in the diaspora without knowledge and experience of what is in the diaspora. One of the younger Nigerian in London, Ladipo Solanke, in 1923, his name was called Ladipo Solanke. He reached in London in 1923 and was so shocked that all Africans who were in London students, they were almost homeless. The white students were just living in better life, but those from the Africa were completely marginalized. And what happened? He saw stories in the media that in Africa there is a lot of, in West Africa there is a lot, too much cannibalism. They eat people. So be aware when you are going there. Are you getting my point?
I am.
Yes, he said he read the newspaper in 1923 in London when the new student arrived in London for study. Be careful, in West Africa there's too much cannibalism. Did you expect white people in London to come closer to the African students? They have to run away. They have to avoid them. So Ladipo Solanke and his friend, they were so furious about it. And this is what they did. He said, we must create our own newspaper. Number one, we must create our own media to tell the story about Africa. We must create a West African Student Union to inform and expel these rumors and misconception about Africa. 1923. And then they formed a newspaper in London. They formed a online radio station. Himself, he became a presenter. And they created the programs to start teaching West African languages, to expel this misconception and ignorance about what the West was thinking about as Africa. West Africa, a lot of cannibalism. So that was 1923, and it is the same journey which you started with the Panafricandailytv. And I just wanted to not to give you morale, but to remind you that the story that you are taking, the struggle now Panafricandailytv is confronting with, to retell the story of Africa. Ladipo Solanke started in 1923 with such negative experience he confronted, which welcomed him in London, that too much cannibalism and eating of human flesh in West Africa. There was no way he is going to change that narrative, unless he formed his own media to confront, to respond to that narrative in the media. So he mobilized the students at the university, and they started the online, they started the media groups. They started going to the radio to present, to teach Yoruba, to teach African culture, that Africa, this is the side of Africa you don't know about it. And within a few years, the Western people had already changed their mindset in London about Africa. But he didn't stop there. Kwame Nkrumah, he wrote a thesis. Kwame Nkrumah wrote a thesis said, Global Decolonization, a focus on Africa. What the independence of Africa, you see, it was not a struggle. Kwame Nkrumah wrote it as a thesis, and then he went with it in London, where he met Ladipo Solanke, and they sent him back home with the mission of changing and fighting to change the stories of Africa. I'm talking about the struggle, centuries of struggling to change and controlling the African stories. So Nnamdi Azikiwe, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, I think he became the president of Nigeria later on. He was actually suspended in Europe and deported back for writing the news, for telling the news and exposing the Western colonial masters about stories they don't tell people at the continent. Nnamdi Azikiwe was a famous, there is no journalist, there is no any journalist in Africa, no media personality in Africa that will tell you that he has not been inspired by the work of Nnamdi Azikiwe in the media houses. Those people, they realize that without media, we are still under colonialism. Without media, we are still under slavery. Without media, the killing of our brothers in the United States during slave trade will not stop until we expose them out there. And it was this media which I'm talking about, which revolutionized a new modern Africa. Kwame Nkrumah defended the thesis. It became an ideology of African independence. Other people like writers such as Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, he embarked on writing. He embarked on writing to tell the story of Africa through writing, through Mount Kenya. So fighting the imperialists was not through the gun, but through the battle of the mind. And if Africans have to be independent, African people must start thinking, critical thinking, writing, and the use of the chance of the modern media streams. If we choose to be independent, and we want to be independent, then it is our responsibility to figure it out how we are going to have our own media. So the television was not created as something for an African man to use it, to enjoy it. It was created for the Western, to control the rest of other global village. And if we accepted it to be controlled until right now, someone to tell our story, to control our story, that means that that person controls our culture. He controls our tradition. In fact, we have Western names or Middle Eastern names. Either we have Christian names from the West, or we have Islamic names from the Middle East. And that status has been sustained because we were told, we were stripped of our names, we were stripped of all our traditions, and they brought a TV. In political science, there is what you call the algar of the cave. The algar of the cave is a theory to explain a society which is still ignorant, marginalized and still ignorant. Look like people in the cave. They have been tied off clothes, put the clothes on their faces, and then they tie their hands, and then they kept them in the cave. And inside in the cave, it's very dark. Then you create a screen like this TV for them to see. When they see pictures on the screen under the cave, they believe that is the reality. That is the natural world where they live. That is the country where they live. If among of those prisoners in the cave tell them that we are in the cave, this is not the country, this is a prison, let's get out, they will not believe that person. Let's contribute all of us to get out of this cave, they will not believe. But if one of them escape outside and see the sun and tell them what you see on the screen, it was actually fake news, outside is the reality. We will not see the reality outside until we get that prisoner to get out and expose how the global village look like when we control our own media. When we write our own story, when we can tell those stories. And this is where I needed, President Paul Kagame said, there is no way we are going to claim independence if we do not control our own history and stories. And I think he's among the people, President Paul Kagame in Rwanda, who is very keen and very interesting to have a proposal for Pan-African Daily TV. I absolutely aware that will be one of those President Kenyatta in Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta. He also said that the history of slave trade is untold story that Africa needs to tell. But how are we going to tell those stories? Unless our own media house to confront those situations, they will tell us that there is a lot of conflict in Congo, but they will not tell us that there is a lot of exploitation of minerals in Congo. Unless we have our own Pan-African Daily TV to retell that information, we will get there and we will be independent by then if we can be able to change that status quo.
Thank you very much, bro. Thank you. And I want to thank our contributors for today that are supporting Ayok Efua, my namesake, Efua. Okay.
Yeah.
Ayoka Efua has just donated $20 to support your conversation and to support the creation of this. I want to come back to this point that those of you that are just joining, a lot of people are asking who is talking on the screen. Who is this? They don't see your name tag. But the problem is the camera position where he is. When we put his name, it close, it's directly on his face. As you see his camera, it's not like out of the studio. He's really focused in it because that's the only position he could do. We tried every other position. It didn't work today. So I apologize on that. He is called Yasin Kiraga. Can you just explain or say who you are, your name?
Yeah, my name is Yasin Kiraga from Burundi, and Yasin Kiraga Misag from Burundi, and I'm the founder and the executive director of the African Descent Society, British Columbia. African Descent Society, British Columbia promotes arts and culture for the people of African descent and the history of transatlantic slave trade and the international decade for people of African descent. We also do the African Descent Festival plus other organizations, but I also own the CEO of the Frontline Public Relations and the Frontline Productions. So you can find me online all the time. So just Google Yasin M. Kiraga, you will see me, or go to African Descent Society or Frontline Public Relations. You'll definitely find me online. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah.
You're very correct. You're very okay. But today he is the Pan-African Daily TV strategist. And
yeah, I'm actually, I'm here right now I'm here on this TV as not as what I mentioned, but as a strategist for Pan-African Daily TV. I want to put my effort, my energy, my knowledge, and the knowledge of the networks I have behind to see that we can have a Pan-African Daily TV, even if it requires me to go to Brazil, to Jamaica, to Cuba, to Venezuela, to Colombia. I know they all welcoming the idea of having a Pan-African Daily TV station in each region of Africa. Doctor, we are the same. I want to, if there are people following us here, I want them to note this. If they want them to know that they are the same, people of African descent globally, if they want them to, if there is someone still doubting, are we the same? Go online and Google General History of Africa, Volume 1, Volume 2, until Volume 10. Those books have been written in partnership between 350 historians, including those of former slave owners and colonial masters. They decided to write one book, different versions, to tell the story of who are the people of African descent. When you read Volume 1, it talks about Africa before colonialism, pre-colonial Africa. Until Volume 10, it talks about who are the African descent people. Where do they come from? What are the different, type of among them, and the roots, the origins. But my message here is the story The books are not controlled by Africans. The books are controlled by UNESCO. And when you hear our African leaders say, Africa must own its own history, that's what they mean. Africa must tell its own history and stories. That's what they mean. But how are we going to control and tell these stories if we do not have our own media? My focus right now here is to send a direct message to Africans in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Colombia, United States, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Floyd Mayweather, and everybody. They should receive this message, even if we do it every day. They should hear this message, Madonna. They should come and everybody throw $1 million out of the billions of money they have and allow this TV. This is the only television which is going to talk about their history. This is the only history which is going to tell the truth about them, as it is the same, the same media house which is going to represent all the negative history, misconceptions Africa has, the Africa as a continent has received ever since colonialism, ever since slave trade in the 16th or 17th century. This TV has that responsibility to go back and retell the story, because there is no anything good at all. The former colonial master has told the world how he transported the 11 million Africans. He does not talking about the injustices that they did on Africans on the docks. They have never tell the world how many African people were tortured and killed and raped. Women, thousands of women, tens of thousands of women were raped on those slave docks. They have not told that story. But they are telling us the stories of Rwandan genocide. What is the story about this? The genocide happened on the slave docks when they are transferring Africans from Africa to the continent. Who will tell that story? Who will tell the story on the different regions where Africans transported until here? But today we are saying, we are talking about that they should return back, international year of return. Return from where? If they have not been opened their mindset, if they have not been taught. We talk about Africa as a source of conflict, source of refugees. But we don't talk about who supplied the guns, who organized, trained the military. And we talk about a continent of a continent of Africa as the poor continent. But we don't tell about who these telephone devices we use, the most expensive iPhones we are using, who manufacture, who control those resources, the minerals, who exploit them. How do they come from Congo and arrive here, into Microsoft? We hear Bill Gates, he talks about COVID-19. He does not talking about who really supply the materials go under Microsoft companies to produce such modern computers, softwares, and all other forms of what? Apple and other telephone devices. But we are also we continue to portray the area as a conflict zone. A conflict zone, that's what we say. That is a dangerous place. Africa has a lot of refugees. Why do they migrate? BBC cannot tell those stories. BBC will never, CNN will never, as they will not tell the story how they exploited King Leopold. King Leopold one day said, Congo is my free state and Congo is my own property. Belgium, the resources it has today, the minerals Belgium owns, they all exploited from Congo, and actually they created the mountains. They planted their own mining centers from the resources they got from where? From the Democratic Republic of Congo. So when you see Belgium today mining, they mine on their own reserves, the reserves that they got from Congo, they got from other regions. It's the same thing from Germany. Germany came with a story. I'm from Burundi. Let me tell you from the region where I came from. Germany was the first colonial master for Rwanda and Burundi and Tanzania. But Germany in Rwanda used the methodology of dividing a Hutu and a Tutsi. What was it? What do they use? They used the TV, they used the radio. They used the media where they could measure Rwandese as a Tutsi that has a longer nose. And they could inform the Hutu that any person you see with a long nose, jaw, face, those are brothers of Jewish people. Slaughter them. What was that? Media can incite a population into what? Into genocide. In Rwanda, who controlled the media during the genocide? It was France and Belgium. Radio Deutsche Welle, German. I want to make everybody know, if they are not aware. Genocide was first happened on the TV, on radio. Radio Kapi, which made a statement. Every Hutu must be ready against cockroaches. What was the cockroach? Cockroach were the Tutsi people. Even if the Hutu were not, I'm not saying that the Hutu wanted to kill, even if they didn't want to kill any person, but the media, the information had already put down. The announcement made online, it influenced every person to know that I am in danger unless I defend myself by killing another person. This is a message I want to send it directly to the listeners, to everyone, that all whatever happened in Rwanda, it first happened on TV, on radio. And who was behind these radio stations? Germany's, Belgium, and France, because they had the signals. So now I want to bring you to that situation. Doctor, if you know very well what happened in Rwanda, you can a little bit feel silenced and think about the impact of this Pan-African Daily TV in Rwanda. And I think you remember why I talked about it, why you think this is important TV to happen on every part of the continent. But this is a story. I'm telling the story on the media. We are on the media now. I'm not on the BBC, because BBC will not give me this opportunity to tell you the truth. Now we are doing a test. How the establishment of Pan-African Daily TV will tell the truth. Now I'm telling the truth on Pan-African Daily TV. It's a test. I'm saying that in the front of the camera. Rwandan genocide before happened. It happened in the mindset. In fact, the genocide happened in Rwanda in the mindset since 1958. A lot of people, they don't understand that story. They only know what happened in 1994. A lot of our families left the region, brothers and sisters. 1958 was the first Rwanda, 59 was the first Rwandan signal that the genocide in 1994 will happen. Because the education system, it was online. The Belgium educating the other group of people, Hutu, that a Tutsi is from Somalia, is from Egypt, and it was on media. It wasn't physical. It's a media and in classrooms. So any information received through the media and communication, it entered directly to the mind. So they prepared the Rwandese Hutu since 1959 1994 was a climax of what had been inserted in the brain. Because the information was always clear. Everyone will know what to do. This was not that, oh, make go and kill. Everyone who knows what to do. Kill the cockroaches. How did the Tutsi knew that they were cockroaches? They didn't know. But someone put it on the media. Kabuga, a billionaire, put it on his television, and he made it official, and he donated the TV, live TV, and the radio station, and they use this to reach every person in everywhere, that do the way you have been told to do. Then the genocide in Rwanda was, who was responsible for Rwandan genocide? It was the West, France, Belgium. That's the reality that they were responsible for. But what was their role? Canadian General Romeo, whom we respect a lot, he was the only person, Western person in Rwanda, in the battlefield. So that is the reason why you see that it is very, very important for us to do what? To know that a lot of work needs to be done, and we also need to be aware of that. That is what happened. That's what happened, and possibly we will be able to change that in the future.
Thank you very much, my brother. Yes.
Yeah.
There is no platform in which we would have to tell not only the African story, but we're just saying you would have to tell your own story. And the story of your life is what actually you are. I mean, that, like we've been saying, it's so intentionally made for this race to remain poor. And so they give false data about you. It doesn't matter how you're living your life. They're going to determine who they want to see you to be. If you're happy, they say you're too happy. Most of us with kids growing up here, you begin to hear some kind of terminology. Oh, your child is too hyperactive. Not hyperactive kids. Always the black child. No, they're hyperactive. I mean, it's so crazy how even these third world status follow even the children that are born in the West. It's permanently that. So even they're growing up with their own classmates as children that are born in a so-called first world, they're always going to be looked, the other children will always underlook the other one as, always primitive, or they're hyperactive, or they're just doing some kind of stuff that are not normal. It is a story that has been systematically planned and passed from generation to generation. So until we reverse that story and just tell your own story, we're not even going to say it like you were saying. Now, we made a lot of mistakes even coming here trying to educate them on who we are. We created events, nearly killed ourselves with engagement and all kind of things to tell the African story. To who were we doing it? Look at all our platforms, even in the West. Who do we serve with those platforms? Either we are taking fundings from the same governments that are doing business with our own or with us just to earn a living, and you control the narratives. You don't. They tell you what to do, what they want to see you do. So we're always working for them. So whether you're doing a project and you're getting funded by these organizations or foreign organizations that are intentional on this aspect, you have to fulfill because you're working for them. They give you the money. And so you even have to tell a lie about your own race, about your own people, and you know it. I've been talking to a lot of reporters that are working for foreign ordered agencies. And I say, how do you report these stories? What are the criteria? I don't want to talk about names, and most of them would not even talk to us on the camera. But these are all stories that is not even relevant because we know it. But it's so important how they penetrate the young minds and people and talented Africans on the continent, put them to work, give them this work, they report the stories, and they edit it according to what they want to see. And before they even produce these narratives, they already prepare even them their mind, because when they tell you a lie, and so you have to write that lie, believing the lie that they tell you. This is malicious. This is intentional. No matter how we want to put it in what kind of category. And that's why we're saying there is no rich African in the eyes of others. None. No matter how you single you out and say, I am the super making one. And as much as you have this color, you're still poor. If you particularly are not poor, your environment is poor. And so there's no way you can get out of it. You can be the most talented and the most successful. You're poor because of the story that they have carefully planted, and it's determined your generation and your generation. So what is our intention? Like we're talking about the Pan-African Daily TV. He's been kicked out and yeah, cut out of the stream. And I'm sorry about that. He's trying to connect, and I hope we could get him. If not, that's why he's been doing his presentation and doing it so well. What do we have with the official launching of the Pan-African Daily TV website, AfroWorld.tv? We've been working on it for more than 8 months. You all know. Most of you are already active on it, and that's why when we start posting and we say we're launching the official website, AfroWorld.tv, and a lot of comments were like, but I thought we already had it because I'm already on it. Yes. We had to take a lot of time and the engineers to develop this platform, which is more than just a Pan-African Daily TV homepage, because we have to give the possibility for Africans to create the stories that we are talking about. Content producing is what we're saying. So creating a homepage is not just giving information about what we do, then it wouldn't have made sense. We've created 3 other pages when we started the Pan-African Daily TV. It was not always a system of like, where is your homepage? And you could see all those links there. But when we started engaging on this, and we begin to realize the importance and the necessity of a media, not just a media that Susan is going to sit here, or any F1 Tata is going to sit here to tell you what others say. No, but a media that every African tells his story. And so it took all this process to put that kind of a mega platform together. But of course, telling the story is talk, talk, talk. And all of us have been complaining about this fact. We keep talking, but we're not acting. And then it brought us to the idea of how do we transform the talking into an action? Because the Africans was always looking for something. When I say the Africans, I mean even me. We've been saying, oh, we talk too much. You know, when are we going to do something? Because that's exactly the point, that they make you feel that you are not doing something. Even when you're doing it, even when you're productive, you still feel you're not doing something, because you want to see the something that you're doing in the format in which they have all drilled our brains to tick that way. No, we realized and we discovered that we have been, everything that we need is available. Everything that an African needs is available. You go to the villages, we're talking about industries, and say, oh no, we are not an industrialized continent, because we wanted to see a factory. Yeah, we wanted to see, operations like in the West. Of course, we have been producing. Our ancestors have been producing. Our mothers have been producing. How do you think we feed ourselves on the continent? We have never had supermarkets like this, but we feed ourselves. That is industrialization. That is production. That is manufacturing. We've been talking export and import. We have been doing it from A to B, from farm to market. But because we always want to see it in another form, we refuse to tell our own stories the way we are. For that reason, we had to create the page or the website in a platform where you put your story. Our parents right up from the village have been manufacturing. They have been producing, like you heard our brother was just saying, our stories have been produced on our clothes. Look at our stories. Look at our clothes. The original African clothes tell the story of an African. We have the mud cloths of Mali. We have the ones from the Senegal. We have the ones from Timbuktu to all. They all are fabrics. And you look at all those fabrics, you have our stories on it. But we don't even produce it. We don't even consume it because we want to see another kind of a story that somebody says, that is who you are supposed to be. And changing the narratives of an African, we have to give you, every African has to contribute to tell his own story. And so the AfroWorld.tv, the official homepage of the Pan-African Daily TV, gives all of you the possibility to create your own, meaning create your account and begin to tell your story. Everything the Pan-African Daily TV would be doing will be taking those stories from the creations and everything that you publish on the blogs will be taken from there to educate ourselves. Now, if we are producing stories in the community from Kenyans, Kenyans should be on that platform creating those stories and telling their stories. And that's how we're going to change that narrative. We cannot take the same stories that we see. If Al Jazeera would share a story about you, you would spread it all over. Other foreign medias would tell a story about you and we keep sharing. That is not your story. When did you create your own? When did you tell your own story so that we can bring it on the platform? You have been creating a lot of things, and they say we're not industrial. Oh, we don't manufacture. Doc, we manufacture. We do. We do manufacture. Africans are smart. They are creative. Look at young Africans creating all sorts of things. But of course, I can be creating something even in Kumasi and the people in Accra, or I can be creating something in Lagos, even in the same neighborhood, and the neighbor doesn't know because there have never been a platform where we share this information. Who is doing what? So the AfroWorld.tv is that platform, one step. It doesn't mean, oh, you have to create something to sell there and then the diaspora buy. Even in your own quarters, on the villages, people don't even know what you create. Because we're still looking for super West to come and put us as industry, and then we say, oh, now we are still in the primitive time, and then we have to move. But your life is going on every day. You're producing, you're consuming, you're educating your children, you are putting food on the table for your family, you're taking care of your health system. Who is that God master that has to come and put something and make you now know, now I am developed? And they keep telling you for how many centuries you are underdeveloped. And now they're telling you a 60-year plan onto which they start even thinking whether you are developed. But your life is going every day. You're producing, you're a responsible man and woman. You bring up your children, you raise them up, you pay their fees, you educate them, you love them, you do everything. Who tells that story? Who? And even we have come to a point where ourselves, we begin to doubt ourselves. And we begin to reproduce prototypes of those very stories that we've been told to you. When are you going to start telling me your own story? That is what the Pan-African Daily TV website, AfroWorld.tv is. When you create something, show us this is my own creation. Drop it on there. Create your account and begin to produce anything that you do. Just put it on there. We're going to bring it on the globe, and we will tell the story of what you are producing. We would tell the kind of goods you're about to do. If you add something and you love it, and you now today, oh, there are cooking schools online and that. Every African cooks at home. Do you know the type of dishes that they cook in those homes and how healthy and tasteful they are? Do we need to create something and bring, oh, this one is a specialist because he has a degree from this? No. The best food we all know were our grandmother's food. How do they eat food? Did they go to any cooking school? Did they even know the kind of ingredient and combination? Oh, this one is healthy, this one is not. Who told them that story? Is it your grandmother? You don't tell your grandmother's story. You don't say your mother is the best cook. Husbands don't say their wives are the best cook. Or wives don't say, oh, my husband, when he cooks, my husband, he cooks so simple. And it's the most tasteful food that we eat at home. Because the men, they have a kind of a way of just putting those things inside there, and it's different. We women, do we tell the stories? And because the West has said the kitchen place is for the African woman, and believe me, most of the best cooks were our fathers. And because they wanted to stigmatize them, that is a lazy man that doesn't cook for his family. And we keep buying those stories. And now we come to the West and, oh, no, if you get a European partner, oh, they cook for their wives. Our husbands cook for us so well. But we don't tell that stories. And they have the best cooks. So storytelling is one of the best. And producing the stories and putting it in a format that becomes a product that we can sell even more original, makes it not stop thinking that we're just talking. Because we actually contribute everything. Yasin,
Hello, doctor.
can you hear me? You're having some technical challenges behind there. Are you okay now?
Yeah, yeah, I hear you now. I think it was I don't. You hear me now?
Yeah, but there's still some very noises or some echoes on your background. What is it that you have?
Okay.
But you're very okay. You're very okay now. Yes, we lost a couple of times, and we were just talking about the production of these stories and what we need. And you've been giving us a lot of experience out there. Now, the next topic that we wanted to talk with you is now, how is the funding? Because I was just saying, if we get the funding from foreigners, we're never going to tell our own story. And that's very strategic in building medias that will be working for us, isn't it?
Yeah. So you hear me now clear?
Perfectly.
Okay. So let me go straight to the issue of, and this is also go to all people online and every Pan-African person around the world. I'm going to use the image with the true stories that we should learn from here on this platform, and it is not only for, but every African person of African descent should learn from. During the colonial time and the slave trade time, the Negroes, as they used to call them, were not allowed to acquire financial institutions fund from the bank loans. There are a lot of discrimination in financial institutions. But how do these people manage to build the institutions which they left as legacies? I used the example of Ladipo Solanke. Now, the other time I told you that Ladipo Solanke, he found the story, negative story in London, that there is too much cannibalism in Africa, and he wanted to change that in the media by creating African-owned media in London. Now, the issue came, the second problem was this. African students in London didn't have any space where to stay, to live. And they need also to construct African hall, Africa House. If you go to London, ask where is Africa House. Where African decent people, no one allowed to borrow money from the bank or even to get a fund. How do they created it, and why this is still important for us? Ladipo Solanke went back to Ghana. He was from Nigeria on a scholarship. And he knew that if he go back to Nigeria, colonial masters will not allow him to come back to Canada, to London. So he spent 3 months, and then he went to Ghana. He went to African cocoa farmers and the cocoa farmers and the mostly cocoa and cotton farmers, and informed them that in London, where the colonial masters sent us to study, there is not even a bedroom for African students, your children in London. We need you to fundraise me money to go back to buy Africa House with the hostels. It sounds very not a reality, but that's the truth of the history. The farmers in Ghana mobilized the village to village mobilization, village to village mobilization. This is the strategy I am bringing to Pan-African Daily TV, and I will ask you one day if it is working. So Ladipo Solanke went and mobilized farmers in Ghana, cotton farmers and cocoa planters. Donate money, whatever you can donate. I need to go to buy your children a house in London. In 3 months, the Ghanaian mobilized the money. And then he came back. He passed over Forabe in Sierra Leone, Forabe College. He took the canoe and then he came back to London. He spent 3 months on the boat. He brought the money in London and they purchased Africa House 1. Africa House 1 was purchased 1923 without any coin. It is there in London. In fact, colonial fighters who were fighting during the Lancaster House, fighting for colonialism, a lot of them went to Africa House. Then he went there back. Africa, he went back again, the second round. He spent a couple of months there. And then he purchased, he told the farmers in Ghana that we purchased the first Africa House on your own contribution. There is no money for white person. And then we need you to help us again to buy the second Africa House too. It is there.
Mhm.
And there is a professor, I think his name is Adam. He's now one of those professors. I will send you the link. And you can bring him on TV to tell this, to repeat what I've said. I think he's a professor of London School of Economics. He's one of the descendants of those families.
Mm.
He's there, what I'm talking about. The Africa House was the first. I want to use this television to doctor to tell you this.
Go ahead.
The first Africa House in London was purchased in 1923 under the mobilization of a Nigerian student, a Yoruba student from Abeokuta in Nigeria. That's where he came from. Danka, the father of the current president of Ghana, Nana Akufo. Danka, his father was Danka Nana Akufo, I think one. He was one of the student with the Kwame Nkrumah came to London. He met them. They are the one who taught Kwame Nkrumah in London after mobilizing all the money that they generated from Africa. Africa House 1, it was purchased. In fact, as I'm telling you this, think about African Union. That was the history of African Union.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of leaders, they don't even know where that idea came from. The idea of African Union, it was not in Kwame Nkrumah's idea. It was for Ladipo Solanke and Danka, the father of the president of Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah was a student of in the United States. And the W.E.B. Du Bois, he told him, it is too pressure in London, in the USA. You will not manage. I think it is better for you to go to London. You meet our friend is there. They sent him a letter and the address. He met Ladipo Solanke. And Ladipo Solanke trained him. And they trained him. He became a secretary within West African Student Union.
Mm-hmm.
As you hear, African Union. The other one was called the West African Student Union. Google there. It is there online on Facebook. It's still there. 1923. After that, the strategy was to buy Africa houses without anybody contribution. 2 houses were purchased. African freedom fighter, those who attended the Lancaster House for the independence negotiation with the Commonwealth country, Britain, they used the Africa House 1. They were there. They all know the place. Today, the house is still there. It's not owned by Africans, but the house was purchased as a hostel for the African. In fact, Marcus Garvey was deported from United States, and then he deported back to Jamaica. His wife ran away, and he went to join Ladipo Solanke. He started teaching Ladipo Solanke, Kwame Nkrumah and others on advocating of the continent of Africa. But I told you the first thing they created was the media. So they created the media to influence the African students and the mindset of the diaspora who wrote, Africa, there is too much cannibalism. So they confronted that by creating their own media. Are we doing what they did today is the question. Are we doing the job of confronting these stories that other people mining and confront them with the media, or we just protest about them? Do they protested, or they just went and confront through the media? I'm telling you the reality of Africa that a person today in my age has never heard about. Those younger men, they established media houses, newspaper, and I gave the example. Dr. Namudi Azukwe, like you, Dr. Suzanne, the other one was Dr. Namudi Azukwe. That one, he was arrested several times, was always in prison for media information. Namudi Azukwe, everybody knows the history of Namudi Azukwe. Most of the time was in jail, fighting for Ghana near independence, and it was a united force. The independence of Ghana, it came as the first independence in Africa, not because Ghana was the favorite. The pioneers, Ladipo Solanke, he was a Nigerian, but Ghana was the first settlement area for him to fundraise money to come to London. That is where he was mining money to come to buy Africa House 1, Africa House 2. And the children of the descendant of the descendant of him, they are, many of them are still around in London. People can tell this fact, the reality. The mother, his ex-children they are still around. I said the president of Ghana, one day invite him here, he will repeat what I have said.
Yes.
His father, they started a party in Ghana, in London, when they were younger people. They started the media. Remember, they started the newspapers, and then they went from newspapers to change the narrative. Then they created West African Student Union. You hear the name African Union. Kwame Nkrumah come to learn the name West from the school. If you Google West African Union, doctor, I want you to take your time on Facebook and Google on Facebook West African Student Union, or in Google, either on Facebook or in Google. You will see Kwame Nkrumah with the Dankwa and all those people I've mentioned at the back, standing like me here. Kwame Nkrumah, very small boy, and then he's standing in front of all those people. Dankwa, the father of the current president of Ghana, Nana Akufo.
Is somebody in the chat Googling to see this information?
Yes.
Are you all? I mean, I'm giving them that. I'm throwing it.
And if
Google this information, West African Student Union on Google.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is, they didn't stop there. They learned that in India, Asian student, they also faces the same problem. They confronted the same. They created a students of Assad, African students of African descent. Was a popular, biggest movement of the 19th century that has not existed today.
Yasin. Oh my God. I was about to ask him a very pertinent question. Ah, my God. We just lost him. I wanted to ask him, where does he have all this strategic information? And that's why I love him, and that's why I like him. I follow him a lot. This young guy sitting here knows everything. Not everything, like, but he knows every good thing about African. Anyway, he's a political researcher student in the Vancouver University, but he didn't just sit there as a student. He is a true researcher. He digs and digs and digs and digs on endlessly. And that's why we're really encouraging us to dig, dig a lot, research a lot. And I'm thanking Asia, I thank Patrick Kasarim. They dig a lot. When we find information, look at the Pan African Daily TV Facebook page, it's almost skyrocketing because we dig those information. We don't sleep. We see any news reported by all these foreign, we go and dig those news and we tap into the sources of it and we bring it and we keep reproducing it. And that's what the AfroWorld, the TV is going to do, but it's going to focus more on young innovators. As I can tell you, it's not a social media platform. It looks like one. Yes, we can socialize, but let me just tell you one of the functions is an e-commerce. Every African in every sector doing whatever thing from the villages to the capital city to whatever is going to have a platform there. Create your account right now. Download the app. It's still available only for Android because actually we're focusing on the continental Africans and the poor of the poorest, so-called poor of the poorest. We reject that one because we're not poor. We're talking about the less privileged and the less opportune people. You will never see them producing and contributing to the economy of Africa because they've been so marginalized in their story and in their day-to-day life and in their creation. Look at the women. Go to the marketplace in Africa and come and tell me the story about poverty that you're hearing on the news. Go to the local market and you would drink the best fresh organic palm wine only in the local market.
Doctor, do I come back?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks. It was a technical issue here on my side, I think. So, but I was explaining that if I would take this chance opportunity, and I would like you invite the professor, the descendant of those some of those students were in London. I was talking about how can we fundraise, and I was giving a strategy. African, we should stop what we call aid. Aid does not help Africans at all. So the first pioneers of fighting for the African continent, they started with the media. They started with the media, creating their own media houses. It was the first tool that the Western frontiers who were fighting for the independence of Africa that they had to use. In China was one of the countries that was supporting Komitanga International, was supporting the West African student fighters who were fighting for the independence. And they established media houses in Cairo, in Egypt, and that's, you know very well that W.E.B. Du Bois is buried in Ghana. He renounced his citizenship from America, and he said, I have renounced my citizenship. I'm not an American. I'm going to die in Ghana. Because the letter he wrote to Kwame Nkrumah that go to London, he wrote a letter, go to Kwame Nkrumah's biography on Wikipedia. You will see a person who sent Kwame Nkrumah to London, and the letter he wrote that Kwame Nkrumah took to London to Ladipo Solanke, and he said, this younger boy looks smart, he's very intelligent, but he cannot afford to live here in US. Help him. This is not my own words. This is information. And Kwame Nkrumah went struggle. Kwame Nkrumah faced the worst form of racism in the USA. A lot of people don't know. He was hated for telling the truth. And they told him, go to London and join. When he arrived in London, Kwame Nkrumah even had no bedroom where he stayed with his friend. Where they stay, there is a manufacturing company, a fish company. Often they cut off these fish head and they throw them away. Kwame Nkrumah sent his friends to go back and pick them. They cook them at night. Tomorrow they wake up in neckties on the street to fight for independence. That's what they did. They died poor. They didn't have anything at all. But often they were online, on radio, online, on radio. The way they started this, because they had a base. Ladipo Solanke, Danko and their friends, they had started already Africa House. It was there. People who lived in London, they know what I'm talking about. You cannot find it, Google West African Student Union. You will find it. Or Union of Students of African Descent. They were all in London, and I'm going to send you some of one of the former students who still is a professor now in London, a historian, a very famous historian in London. I think one of the best historian in London. He has written several books in London to keep the legacy of his parents they started. So once they obtained the media presence, and everyone knew that there is Pan-Africanism, independence struggles, the word independence, African independence, it was in Kwame Nkrumah's thesis. Today, the students who come from Africa, they want to be psychologists. They want to study things for the Western people. And at the end of the day, the PhD has no value. The master's degree is incompatible with what you have started here.
Absolutely.
But Kwame Nkrumah did a master's degree. They said, the boy looks not to be smart, but is very good, eloquent speaker. Allow him to give him a chance. So they give him a chance in Kwame Nkrumah. In his thesis was global decolonization, a focus on Africa. You can find it in Nkrumah's autobiography. Global decolonization, a focus on what? On Africa. Kwame Nkrumah didn't want to be a pilot, to study mathematics, he wanted to put what he's talking about in the book. And then he got a platform in London where Danko had already established media platforms. They were busy, they were visible everywhere. Then the next thing, once you acquired the media, once you control the story, you can influence the policies. You cannot influence the policy if you do not control where the policy go. A policy is a story. If someone said today, in West Africa, there is a lot of cannibalism, don't go there. How are you going to confront to change that story? If you do not, are you going to run it to inform people in the US, and you run it to go to, you have to have Panafricandailytv to say, sorry, whatever information you say on BBC, we would like to let you know, do not believe that information. This is Pan-African Daily Television information. As Al Jazeera do. The news from Al Jazeera, we know where Saddam Hussein is located. They have to go to make a media plan with Al Jazeera to give them the story. That is what happened. If you don't control your story, the one controlling your story will know what happened in your bedroom, what happened in your house. We will be able to tell the whole house where you live. And if that is the plan, and you say, if we consider a global village as a house, some people, they are in the bedroom enjoying, others they are in the sitting room dancing, and they are in stories, others they are on the shade chatting, sharing stories. Where is the African people? Where do they sit? Possibly they are in the yard looking at other people enjoying in the house. And that is the major challenge I'm trying to show you, that as we are struggling with all of these problems, how can we fundraise and we create a plan that those who we are sending people in Africa to mine stories, to create the media houses, where should we get the fund? I said strategy number one, Ladipo Solanke, he left Nkrumah in London, and others, he sacrificed for 3 months. He left his books behind, and he sacrificed 3 months, went to Ghana, and he formed the Ghanaian cotton farmers and cocoa growers. In London, life is too bad. No food, no housing. We are almost homeless. We need you to support us. Farmers, the chief, our chiefs, Ghanaian chiefs, and all of us, they mobilize village to village mobilization. So I want to leave a strategy number one here, how we are going to build this television. Village to village mobilization, town to town mobilization campaign. $1 in Ghana, those are $2,000. $2,000, maybe $1 may be less than 100 Ghanaian in local currency, I'm not quite sure, but every Ghanaian in the village is able to get $1. Village to village mobilization. We want you to start where Ladipo Solanke left. We want you to start where Dr. Namudi Azikwe, he left. In fact, I can make an argument that maybe the spirit of those people are haunting you. Because yes, because that is exactly what they were trying to do, and they kick them out before they accomplish the mission.
Oh, okay.
So once we get the media, what is the next step? Political institutionalization.
Okay.
Political demand, institutionalized democratization. How are you going to do this? A media platform, that is where we share the ideas, the views, which can institutionalize, institutionalize our democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. If we do not have those tools, that means that BBC will pass over the policy from IMF, from World Bank. Recently, IMF said that we are not going to give Robert Mugabe money because he kicked out, he took over the farms from the white farmers. What is Zimbabwe today? What is Zimbabwe? You take $100 and you put the sack of money in the bag and you put it on your what? On your head to go to buy a bread. That is Zimbabwe today. Zimbabwean dollar is no longer what? Zimbabwean dollar came, those who don't know, the Zimbabwean dollar, to call it Zim dollar, it came as a result of United States when he was searching for what you call hegemonic powers after colonial what? After colonialism. United States emerged as the most richest nation, and they wanted their dollar to control, to dominate all over, to fight it, to bring the pound down. In order that US to do that, they formed the alliance. Some of those alliances, Zimbabwe ended part of the alliance with the US, and the Zim dollar was born. It became a high expensive currency, but when Mugabe turned against the interest of the Americans, he said Zim dollar must fall down. What does that mean? Where the message go? You see, IMF said we devaluate the currency in Malawi. President Bingu Mutalikwa, BBC announced, devaluate or follow. How many days passed over before the death of Bingu Mutalikwa? The campaign was very clear. Those who come from Malawi, devaluate the kwacha or not. Devaluate the money or go die little. Is Bingu Mutalikwa still around? He died in office before they inaugurated him as the president, and the vice president took over, Joyce Banda. I saw that experience by myself. Devaluate his brother, Professor Peter Mutarikwa, from Yale University, as a financial. Why those people? Why the battle was in the media between Mutarikwa, Peter Mutarikwa, and his brother? Bingu Mutarikwa was working for US and the World Bank as a banker. Peter Mutarikwa, his brother, was also a professor at Yale University as a financial professor, and then he joined World Bank. They knew that if they can take the idea in Africa to have its own currency from what they learned from the West. They told Bingu Mutarikwa he knew everything from the World Bank. If we are let these two brothers to do, they said devaluate kwacha. They refused. Bingu Mutarikwa died because of the devaluation of money.
Absolute. Those are
a lot of people did, and it was in the media. They hit him in the media. Gaddafi, what killed the Gaddafi? It was the media. Gaddafi, when the revolution started, it was the media, BBC, CNN, Radio Dutch Valley, France, and said that they started constructing this revolution, the stories of the revolution, by empowering, giving the revolutionaries energy, giving the protesters in Egypt and all other forms of protest you have done have been constructed stories by the Western mainstream medias. And this all has been happening because there is no any confront. How do you confront those stories? I gave you the example of Ladipo Solanke. Ladipo Solanke said, we cannot going to borrow money anywhere. Let's go and mobilize the farmers. The farmers back in 19 at that time were so poor than the farmers we have today, doctor. The farmers we have today in Congo are today Congo we have gold. In South Africa we have diamond. You know, all millionaires are Econ and others. Why don't we reach out to them and we say we came from Germany? We are on village to village mobilization campaign to buy or to construct the Pan-African-Daily-TV. Why don't we look into the work of Nnamdi Azikiwe and we read through what did Nnamdi Azikiwe did to portray the Western imperialists and their true objectives and what they hide from the African ignorant people. Why don't we tell how they wrote about the role of the church? They managed to use their own small media to tell that the church and the Arabs, this is the truth what they are looking for. They gave you the Bible and the Quran, and they taught you to be polite and close your eyes when they are preaching. Then tonight they take things from you. That stories were constructed very clear. They also told the Africans that they came with the Bible, the cross, and the gun, and the story of colonialism. It is the same thing that the Arabs used. At the end of the day, that is how me and you, we ended up having Western names. I either have Yasin and you have Christine or a different name. Because the imperialists all came from all sides of the corner attacking one continent. Until today, it is the same status quo. But the African person has not learned anything from all the problems, and he regret nothing at all. And I said that we always marginalize the central issues, and we centralize the marginal problems that definitely have nothing. If you cry, we had the issue of Ebola. Now we have the issue of COVID-19. Who tell the story? Madagascar manufactured the medicine from baobab tree, and they said we have the medicine. BBC said Madagascar is trying to confuse the planet, people around that they have. Where do they got the medicine? But the French professor who said we should test COVID-19 medicine should be tested in Africa, it is circulated everywhere. If we cannot get our own media, psychologically, for those who study psychology and sociology, there is what we call schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a psychological disease. It either attacks you as an individual, or it attacks the whole community, or the whole continent. It can be attacked everybody. And when it attacks you, you don't believe. You start doubting everything. As someone who suffers with this schizophrenia, he does not believe that he's an African. No. He only be able to say I'm white because he see that the white, they are well off. They have BBC, they have CNN. He said he changed the accent and said, no, I'm a Canadian. I am not an African. Even if the color telling him back home is there, he became what you call a high white. He became more high white because he has been infiltrated with the stories inside the whole body. That is the danger of slavery. That is the danger of colonialism. There is no way you can change colonialism without a media house, because colonialism come to Africa with the media. That's how first explorers, they came to Africa. And then after the explorers, then we see missionaries. They brought the religion, whether the Arabs They went to, oh, whether they what, they all did the same. By the way, fundraising, I mentioned the application, rejuvenating. We need to rejuvenate ideas of the old, from our descendants from the past. The strategies they used to overcome racism, we have abandoned those ideas. And that's why you see the spirit are haunting us, either to suffer and perish forever, or we need to go back to those ideas. Max Gave, what did Max Gave did? He created the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association. And he said, if you do not own your story, you are like a tree without roots and a tree without branches. That is very simple. How did he mobilize the money? That changed the all African American, including Oprah, you can tell her, all of them, the wealth they have, the liberty they have, it is because of the contribution. Louis Farrakhan, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, you know, all the wealth which you see in African American, it was because of Max Gave. He was from Jamaica. He met white people, destroyed the mentality of all African American. And he said, if you do not own your story, your history, you are like a tree without roots and branches. He opened the mind. He removed, because they were, all of them suffer with what I've said. Schizophrenia prevents you to believe that you are black. You say, no, I'm a Chinese. Even if you see us, no, I'm a Chinese. Max Gave said, UNIA, we are going, this is strategy 2. The first one I said, we need to go back village to village or town to town mobilization to fundraise money on we can do on Facebook, on Twitter, village to village mobilization. Whether you are, whatever where you are, that is your village. Whether we find you on Twitter, that is your village, that is your town. But we said we must create a strategy. Panafricandailytv, village to village, town to town mobilization. We need 5 million or 1 million, whatever amount of money, and we need that now. The future is now, not tomorrow. Then,
thank you very much.
Max Gave,
Yes.
Max Gave created UNIA, and he said, people told him, this is a thief. Where are you going? Are you going to steal? Where are you going to get the idea of changing the life of black people? He told them, in fact, it's not about changing them. We are even going to buy a ship that going to return them to Africa, not to change them here. We are going to return them. I said, where? We are even going to buy a country. We are not even returning them from here, but we are going to buy them a country. And say, where? Liberia. People don't know how Liberia came to be. Max Gave, they had acquired the whole land of Liberia. The day the ship was going, planning to return African American, Max Gave was deported. That's why Max Gave was deported. His wife fled to London, where he met the person I told you. So what happened? Max Gave, when they created Universal Negro Improvement Association, that is not the whole definition. The name is Universal UNIA Stroke AL, Universal Negro Improvement Association, and the African what? Community League. What happened to them? Where are they today? Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Community League. We are improving the life of the diaspora Negroes. Those they are called Africans also, they are part of. We cannot, in fact, he said we must dance one song. We cannot dance a song in the US when the other people are crying. We all must dance one song. Then the first thing they discussed, media. Who is the writer better than W.E.B. Du Bois? in today. What issue that W.E.B. Du Bois, in fact, this television, Pan-African-Daily-TV, Pan-Africanism was initiated by who? W.E.B. Du Bois. This television, Pan-African-Daily-TV, must first embrace the legacy of W.E.B. Du Bois, because that was the idea, to have a he wrote a book called the Black Encyclopedia World, where we put all the ideas. Africans to have their own TV, Africans to have their own radio, Africans to create their own neighborhoods. Everything which we are talking about here, it is already documented. You are just implementing. We are just here implementing. So the idea of Max Gave, we need to buy a ship to return back people. As we are thinking, how can we fundraise for the Pan-African-Daily-TV? We can also ask, how did the Max Gave and the African American purchased a ship? Is there any African people right now own a ship? Those Negro, they purchased it, they fundraise coin to coin, dollar to dollar mobilization in US. They purchased Black Star line. Google it. You will see the giant. Today, even if you ask Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania, they cannot buy Black Star line to return it back. The other time, there were 4 people: Max Gave, his wife, W.E.B. Du Bois, and the few of them, George Padimora. George Padimora was from Trinidad and Tobago, was in charge of circulating information, creating media houses, and sharing information. For those who are fighting in African front, Max Gave, George Padimora, they created a radio station in Cairo, and they put a station in Cairo. They put a station down to the West Africa. They are no longer there, existing. Now it is the time, this Pan-African-Daily-TV, to go back and return those media houses where they were. Don't create, they were there. Do not create, they were there. And if you need to know how to fundraise, how we can fundraise, follow the strategy what they did. Town to town, village to village, coin to coin. They purchased a ship, number 1. They purchased the Black Star line 2. And then they said the creation of wealth. Now they are no longer admire media. They are no longer admire wealth. The restaurants you see today in North America, every restaurant you see in US, chicken and steak houses, restaurant, those were Unia business. Every woman had to have a business during the time of Max Gave. In US, in your neighborhood, you had to have a black business, African descent business there. That's why you see today restaurants, chicken houses, there are many, but those were all ideas of when they created all of that. Media, they are always on TV, and controlling everything, became stronger. A one voice, they controlled the story. They started creating wealth. Tell me a person who was poor during that time. They purchased Liberia, Sierra Leone, a group from Canada, 1780, 1794, a group from Canada, they took over and they returned, they went and took over. Now, professor, doctor, tell me today, can African is able to buy Rwanda? If you mobilize all African people and say Rwanda is a land, is for free, can they purchase it?
No.
Then Max Gave was less than 10,000 people, less than that number.
Yes.
Liberia is a land they purchased to return all African American. Negotiation agreement. The day the ship was leaving, Max Gave was deported to Jamaica. W.E.B. decided, he said, no matter what will happen, I have to die in Africa, even if I step 1 foot there on the border, but I have to die there. Where did he die? He died in Ghana. He's buried in Ghana. I don't know if now you've had last year there was 2019 back to Africa. You've had it. Who started it back to Africa? US and Ghana. Back to Africa International Year of Return. Why did it come from? The past is a haunting, yes, meaning the past are the reality of who we are supposed to be. No matter what we run away from the Africa's past, it will haunt us. Either we unite and we do it, or we perish forever. Kwame Nkrumah, that is what he said in 1960 on the inauguration of African Union. He said, African, we must unite and work on our own destiny, or we should accept to perish forever quickly. You can think about it right now. Is Africa really claim its future today? Can Africa claim its future today in the presence of military defense? Every African country on the continent has the US military control. Alone, US alone has the French control. All West African countries, all West African countries, doctor, all West African countries, French, including Cameroon, they keep their money in the French Reserve Bank. Agreement they made. Who knows that? Who will expose that? Who will talk about it? They have to die little because they do not have exposure to tell that information. The best way to eliminate racism or that kind of human atrocities is to talk about them where live in the screen. So Africa had been denied the opportunity of telling its own story by being considered as a vulnerable. And until we get out of that vulnerability, that kind of marginalization, entertaining us with money, $200 million being donated to Burundi. Burundi has no money capacity to pay that money in the next 100 years. Then they claim the whole system telling the story of Burundi. I told you what happened in Rwanda. A single man came out and he said, I provide my radio, my TV to organize, to communicate. In Rwanda, there was one radio and one TV which was in charge of telling the genocide. That was the Okapi Radio and Okapi TV, sponsored by France and Belgium. After they finished their negotiation with the President Kagame, they handed over the former owner, Kabuga, the former owner of those media houses. They gave him to Kagame as what? As a gift to collaborate. Are you getting my point? Kabuga, whom they used it, now they return him back to President Kagame that we have called Kabuga since 1994. He's been hiding in Belgium. They handed him Rwanda and Belgium. They normalized the relationship. Kabuga is in jail. So, lack of media control. That is how things go. As archive. Now, in Vancouver, me as a historian, sometimes I take time to do research. In Canada, there is no African libraries. If you want a picture of Susan, who was in Canada in 1940 from Africa, you have to buy the picture, you have to buy the photo from CBC archive. CBC is a TV. They are the one who have the images which we need. If you train non-African people how to play African music, what happened? And you give them all the rhythms, and the code is how to play rumba. When you die, they take over. They became the owners of rumba music. Is it not the same? Rocco is owned by them. Jazz is a multi-billion company. A single jazz festival in Canada, a festival like a jazz festival in Canada can sustain in Rwanda, the whole country. A single festival, one time. Blues festival in Canada can maintain, can control Rwanda and Burundi. A festival, I don't know if you get me clear.
Yes.
Then if that is the case, how come that African leaders can go and sit at African Union like me right now here, and they discuss, all of them in chair like me, that America see them, Britain see them on BBC? Ooh, that is a big problem. That is a big problem. That is what I told you. The
Yes,
issue of schizophrenia is if it empowers you to think that you are the other person, not you.
that's correct.
And it has been a manipulation of the Western mainstream media. So for me, I provided in a narrative way or explanatory way of how can we fundraise. I said, Ladipo Solanke idea, we can fundraise on the issues of Kwame Nkrumah and others, the way they raised the money. And Marcus Garvey and others, they had no anybody funding them. Maybe I can also make this argument. Maybe it is too much support from the West that you know, when a person is lazy, he doesn't want to work, you feed him. The Western country must shut down all of their media houses. In COVID, they should shut up CNN. They should shut down all those TV, Deutsche Welle, CNN, BBC, and they don't show anything about Africa, which they will not do. But if there is a chance and they shut them all down, the Pan-African-Daily-TV will be used as gold. They will look for it. They will see it as the central issue because it has been a marginalized issue now, but they will see it as a centralized what issue. Number 3, Ethiopia. Another experience I give you how to fundraise Ethiopian airline. I want to give you things that can help everyone here to learn how he can stand economic independence. People who make argument online that Africa is colonized, is depending. A typical African man, a man, upright man like Thomas Sankara, he never depend on the West any debt. He lead these people to suffer, and he tell them the money you eat is poison. In salary, those who from Mali, Burkina Faso, ask them. Thomas Sankara had a policy. When you come to all people during salary, Mali, Burkina Faso during salary, during Thomas Sankara leadership, you go to work with the 2 types of clothes. You go with the wigs to work, and you wear necktie like the way you are right now, doctor. Very nice in Western clothes. But when you enter the office and you see the picture of Thomas Sankara, remove them, wear like an African. So people in Burkina Faso knew there is Thomas Sankara dress and the Western what? If you are working in Burkina Faso, you wear African. It was known as Thomas Sankara. When he died, they went back in the Western lifestyle, but he banned everything. We need to ban Africans to think, to watch the TV and see, introduce them to the software, to the African media houses, and empower them to watch them, to utilize them. But I am always getting, when you walk around, you can fly. Go in Germany where you are, or in London, you can fly African flies. And if you say African flies and chicken, and another person say French flies and chicken, a Nigerian will go, or Ugandan to buy there, because he doesn't believe there is African fries. He does not believe that way. He was never taught that there is African fries at all. Because look, the Nando's, Nando's is a company that is another fundraiser. Look them. Nando's started from where? South Africa. From a Portuguese African what? African brother who started this. In fact, his name is Fernandos. A lot of people say Nando's, but the name is Fernandos. He went and looked at African chicken, which they normally fly on the streets of Ghana, Nigeria. You will see people who fly the chicken on with African fire, and he enjoyed it. Then he took that flavor and he organized it very nice, and he called it Nando's. Nando's. No, that is what he call Fernandos. Nando's is, we are eating his name, and Fernandos or Nando's, it became a global brand. If you read about Nando's on their website, they will tell you this flavor originated from Africa, Durban, South Africa, from a Mozambique brother who started it after watching and observing the African chicken.
That's true. I know.
Now, why don't we draw those examples? If Nando's started and the owner fundraised money, and now it is one of the richest franchise globally, why don't we have our media house which can promote and protect those legacy? And finally, I said Ethiopian airline is another fundraising strategy. You know, I'm trying to revive the old ways, all the school of how Africans took the pain they had, the struggle they had with no help, and they find these ideas, and then they did what? They did Ethiopia. Italy invaded Ethiopia. America said, they told the Emperor Haile Selassie, we cannot give you airlines to fight Ethiopia, our brother. Britain said, we can't give you airline to fight Italy, our brother. You better die yourself. The African Americans in USA, Captain John Robinson and others, they were students who had been denied the opportunity in engineering industry. They had already graduated as engineers, but they had no opportunity to work in airline companies. When they heard that Ethiopia denied the opportunity to fly the airlines, they went there and they met King Emperor Haile Selassie. Ask African American, ask them one by one, they know the history I'm talking about. They reached in Ethiopia and they told the Emperor Haile Selassie, we know how to build airline, but we had been denied the opportunity. We came here to help you. We will create it. Ethiopian airline was born out of African people. It was not invention from anywhere. It was made by African American and Jamaicans. In fact, that's why you hear a lot of Jamaicans say Emperor Haile Selassie was God. Because the first time they met him, they didn't know there is God. They made the plane. Ethiopian airline became East African Airways. Now is one of the leading worldwide giant.
Absolutely.
We need to go and organize ourselves this way. Music. A lot of African Americans, when they deny the opportunity to create their own spaces, they embark on music, guitar. We need to organize a show. A single show in Canada, a single show in Nigeria, a show in Uganda to fundraise money, and the money go to Germany to build the Panafricandailytv. We need to make a partnership with African Wizkid, and the others, the Peace Square and others. We need to go and tell them the story behind Panafricandailytv. You will be heroes. The TV is going to organize African Grammy Award, which you've never been given the opportunity. It's our time, but we need you to help us to organize it. Let's organize shows. Let's organize online fundraising, and we raise money. Rupita Nyong'o, we need you to go and request the audience to meet her and tell her this story that Rupita Nyong'o, we'd like to see you on Panafricandailytv rather than to see you on BBC. If you contribute a fundraising, one-time fundraising, you will never be forgotten. Your picture, you will be here at Pan-African Daily TV as a hero, rather than to be behind in the BC archive. This is the time to confront those people under village to village mobilization, town to town mobilization.
Thank you
I
very
tell
much.
you, it will not take us far away before we build this magnificent idea. And we have one station in Cuba, one station in East Africa, one station in West, one station in Asia. Those are 4 Asias we need to change the whole life of what? We form partnership with Ethiopian Airline. I know they very much without doubt that they are here. They will support this idea. There is an organization which has been in USA recently. It's called the Africa. Now they call it Pan-Africa. now they changed the name. It has been called Africa International. Africa, it is the largest global funder on African continent for African Americans. Now they changed the name. They call it Pan-Africa. Pan-Africa. And now after changing the name, they left USA. This is another good news to you. They decided to change the name and leave USA to go to live in Senegal. Because they want to change the narrative of the continent. They decided this year, actually, was last year. They changed all of everything. Now they are in Senegal. They need us. They need Pan-African Daily TV. This is the time they need this television. Farmers, immigrants who come here, whatsoever, everyone donate $1, village to village. We don't need 1,000. If you contribute, well and good, 1 million, well and good, but we need $1 from you. $1, village to village, town to town mobilization for Pan-African Daily TV. The strategy, we are reviving the old ways that our pioneers of this Pan-Africanism, the strategy they used to revive the continent. That's where they were to go. And I've mentioned how Max Gave did it, how George Padimora, how Kwame Nkrumah. Doctor, I want to remind you the idea African Union, you see, it started in London, West African what? Student Union. They had the vision that one day, one time, one day, we shall build a building called the African Union. You don't see it there. You see it in Addis Ababa. And you see the statue for those people I'm talking about. They are there. How did that idea came out? When Nkrumah get the independence in Ghana and he became a president, he remembered the idea, all the ways, and he formed immediately Ghana-Mali partnership. And the expand other countries came later. So today, if you are 2 people and you are ready to take this idea of Pan-African Daily TV, you can say, never doubt the small group of people with well-organized idea, they can change the world. And they say, yes, we can do so. And then you go. Don't return back. The rest will be history in the books.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yasin. I mean, it's exhaustive. This is one of those first shows that we hit almost 3 hours. I mean, this is marvelous. And actually, we have to stretch it this week because this is the opening of the launching of the Pan-African Daily TV website, official website, the afroworld.tv. It was very nice to have this starting conversation on why actually we need the TV and why the Pan-African Daily TV is the game changer.
In fact, Doctor, we start with the comments. I see a lot of comments here.
Yes.
Comment as you preach $1 village to village mobilization dollar Pan-African Daily TV. Go to fund me $1 until we reach to everybody.
That's right. And now we already see people in the group that are also advocating. Global African said he's gonna volunteer, and then we see Sinclair is also saying they would like to have that in the Caribbean. And so any other person that is willing and say yes, we can run one in any village, please reach out to us as we start.
Doctor, I'm leaving you tonight with a commitment.
Thank you.
A commitment that you are going to lead a job without a pay is the commitment of reviving the old Pan-Africanist mentality ideas they had to transform the people of African descent in the diaspora and on the continent.
Okay.
That's where we were lied. We had the media houses, we had the entertainment things, we had the tools, we had the political idea. Pan-Africanism was the political agenda to lead the Africa to the independence. When we got the independence, we finish.
Thank you very much. Yes, but you are our strategist on the Pan-African Daily TV, and so we're going to be having you here once every week to continue the journey and to teach us, because I mean, hey, people,
we shall be coming here as we talk, we chat, we village to village mobilization. You put there a GoFundMe.
Yes.
As someone, everyone, even myself, I would like to put in village to village mobilization $1.
Okay.
Town to town.
Town, village to village, community to community, township to township, city
town
to city.
Township, Pan-African Daily TV. And we need it 5-year plan, German.
All right.
Next strategy, and then we need 2 stations, one at the continent, Rwanda, another one, or any area, but we need to move. And in the future, Black History Month of Canada, I say the future is now. This is for the government of Canada. Black History Month. The future is now. If we say the future is tomorrow, we are going to sleep.
Okay, that's true.
So this should be our slogan: village to village, town to town, community center to community, mobilization, $1. The future for our future is our TV. No more. And we'd make it very clear: no more BBC, no more. We want them; they will be there, but we also need this to be in heaven with our own space, not to be in heaven with the BBC where they're gonna kick us away. We need to have our own space. And if African people need to get this space in front of God, Africans must wake up today.
Exactly. Thank you very much. We're closing now. It's almost 3 hours. I want to thank you out there in Vancouver. I know it is midday or past midday. Thank you so much, Yasin. And we're going to have you next week again on the show. And it's going to continue because you have volunteered and say you are the strategist, and you have to see this work like a historian student out there. You've read a lot and you've seen how our ancestors made things work, and that we should not create anything new in terms of strategy and concept, but we should follow the steps and revive existing memories and structure. So thank you so very much. And one last word to thank your audience, because you've motivated this audience for more than 3 hours, and they are all close to 3 hours, and they are loving you, they are celebrating you, they're thanking you for the brilliant idea. As you know,
thank you so much.
Village community,
and thank you so much, all people. I've seen lots of people online. I also want to thank Rita, who has been here with me working on making the technology. I think tomorrow you're going to have Rita with you.
I'm going to have Rita tomorrow. Yes, exactly.
So
Rita is going to be on the show
she will be reaching out to you. Thank you so much for all the great work. We are here to make the strategy. I'll put my back all means of strategies to get this TV. We want it in the next 2 years. We don't even need in 1 year. We need it.
Thank you very much.
Before Akoni put the electricity in Africa, we need him to donate the money on this platform first. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, my brother. Honestly, I mean, So
God
as you
bless
can
you.
see,
Yeah.
God bless you too. God bless you, bro. God bless
Bye
you.
bye.
We're rounding up. Yes. Good night. Yeah. So we're gonna have Rita. Rita is also a very powerful woman out there in Canada. They reached out to me last week, him and Yasin, and said they are volunteering, and this Pan African Daily TV must move a step. As they got the information about the launching of the Afro World and the TV, they were so excited and said, no, we have to contribute. And but the contributing is like volunteering to be a strategist and to put those structures out there. If you have that same spirit to say, yes, I can volunteer and I can create in my neighborhood or in my community, please just reach out to us, drop a text. I see already comments inside there. Everyone that, oh, people that are interested and say, yes, I can do something. Let's just work out together, and we sit down together with Yasin and they give us a strategy to revive that. He's a historian out there and he's been working on all these projects. He knows every nook and corner and tricks and concepts, and even reaching out to most of these people. He is well connected and is a very, as you can see, the bibliography or the library of African descendants and their history. So thank you. We're going to have Rita, as you just heard, tomorrow, but the whole week we're going to have DJs even. And this weekend we're going to be rocking with DJ Sweet. DJ Sweet is saying, I want to contribute here, and I'll be doing a live show on Afro World, the TV, to celebrate this milestone. And so we have MCs, we have DJs, we have entrepreneurs, but we want to focus also on young entrepreneurs that are already exploring the Afro World, the TV platform. There's so thousands of them that are selling their products already. The focus of the Afro World, the TV platform, the website of the Pan African Daily, is to empower young people to create and to sell. It's all about manufacturing. All manufacturers, the buying and selling, the exporters, you can create any stuff and sell. It is not just a social media platform to come and share pictures. Please, if you are interested in sharing pictures and all that, yes, we do welcome you, but that is for Facebook. Facebook is a social media platform. The Afro World, the TV looks alike like that, but it is more of an e-commerce to promote and to rebrand our young Africans, the ones that no one would put an interest on them, the less privileged, but doing incredible things. This week on the show, we're going to have a young, creative, single mother, even a woman, a girl, not a woman, even a single young African girl, child. I call her every name. She's called Ayen Leonette, and she transforms waste and makes beautiful spaces on the continent, and particularly in Cameroon. These are all stories we want to talk about. When we say stories, we're not going to be narrating, oh, I was this. The stories are seen in your creation, in your work, in your energy to transform and to make a living. And Leonette is saying, I started this initiative just to put food on the table and to educate my children. And he has young kids, and you can see her carrying her babies on their back and refurbishing used tires, and creating beautiful space. This wonderful stories is what the Afro World TV is all about. We also have a queen coming also on the platform for the launching, and she's going to be talking about young women and relationships. She's more of a content producer, and she's a Southern Sudanese young creative queen. She's doing marvelous work. Now we have a lot of people already selling at the marketplace on the Afro World TV. They're connecting, they're sharing. We also have musicians and entertainers and MCs and bloggers and news. I mean, everything that you have there is the biggest e-commerce for innovative, creative Africans that will never have that space. If you're creating anything, you're producing anything, you're selling anything, you have a handwork, you have a trade, the Afro World TV is doing intertrade among Africans in the quarters, on the marketplace, and everywhere, connecting. So you can stay in your home, in the quarters in Accra or in Ghana or in Lagos or in Dar es Salaam, and you want to go even to your market square, you can check on the Afro World TV to find out what is in your neighborhood. So the Afro World TV is more than just a social media. It's not. It is a TV and an industry of all manufacturers and exporters and producers and buyers and sellers who connect to empower their lives to sell their products. Now we have new features. That's why it took us time. We have audios. You can call the whole world on AfroWorld TV for free. But we also have video calls, and all these projects that we've put in will be explaining every features to you on how you can use it. But the purpose is not just to talk. The purpose is to connect with your business partners on the continent and in the globe. And now if you want to use the video calls to really see if these are people, because like on other social media or other platforms, they are robots. And you keep saying, I have 1 million followers. No. On the AfroWorld.tv, you can connect with your seller and your exporter and your manufacturer and see if this is a true person or a brother in the neighborhood. So there's just a lot. It's a mega, mega, mega milestone that we achieved in 8 months. And we're so happy to present this baby. I'm calling it a baby to you. If you haven't created your account, just go on www.afroworld.tv, sign in, make sure. We've been having a lot of feedbacks on all the users' names and stuff like that. Yes, it happens on any platform when you're creating your account for the first time. They have to do all the checks. So you get used to knowing that your username has to just be one word, no hyphen in it. So when it keeps rejecting you, please, you would see all this information, but it is accurate, it is certified, it is proven, and it is functioning. So we want to thank you. We'll be having Rita from the Canada again on the show, but we'll be also having a lot. We have also the CEO of Addis Bank from the ADDI, who will be coming here and talking about investment possibilities. We're also having a lot of cryptocurrencies that are coming up. Businesses that are operating on the AfroWorld TV are business that will be interviewing and promoting them on the Pan-African Daily TV, as well as other stories. Thank you. Good night. Yes, we have played our part, and we see ourselves tomorrow, same time. Watch out for the flyer. Bye. Good night.